Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, co-founders of the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, they are reportedly now planning significant donations to political action committees supporting the Trump campaign, adding to the list of Silicon Valley tech leaders who are pledging money to the former president. Joining us right now to talk about what is going on in the Valley, Jessica Lessin, the information editor-in-chief. Good morning to you. We've been talking all morning about the video that those two gentlemen put out on YouTube, but of course also David Sacks speaking now at the Republican National Convention this week, and it appears calls by Elon Musk to Donald Trump that may have even led to J.D. Vance's selection as VP. Speak to what seems like a major shift, or at least a visible one, in the Valley.
Absolutely, Andrew. There has been a sea change. We've gone from loud voices in the community speaking out on behalf of Biden to now those voices being quiet. And we're seeing all the people you named. The information broke yesterday, the news about Ben and Mark, who had been very critical of Trump at Andreessen Horowitz, openly endorsing him. I think these tech leaders say they're being moved by policy. They're being moved by Trump's support for crypto, for AI. But, you know, there really is not perfect alignment between Trump and the tech community. The community's at odds on immigration, even EVs, which I think is a big question for Elon Musk, who's come out in front of Trump. So we've seen a sea change, but there are many, many open questions right now.
Well, so that was the question. How much of this is a sea change, and how many of these people do you think either were Republicans, closet Republicans, or other things before? You talked about folks who are not speaking out now. Is that because they are still planning to back Biden? Are they shifting to Trump? When you think about some of the big companies, and I'm talking about the Googles and the Apples and the Microsofts, has the management of those firms shifted, or are we talking about sort of individual pockets?
I don't think there's signs that the management of the big firms have shifted. But I think a lot of people, like people across the country, are maybe hoping that President Biden does step aside. And so they're not out there openly endorsing him. I think the big companies are really quite conflicted. You know, they are facing regulatory pressures from both sides. They have concerns about both sides. And we're not seeing those CEOs speak out, except, of course, for Elon Musk, who also controls the platform of the X. You know, we surveyed information subscribers yesterday to get a slice of the tech community, and 59% said they plan to support Biden, 27% Trump. We'll keep doing those numbers to compare. That strikes me as some movement towards Trump for sure, but still the majority for Biden.
Jessica, can you explain sort of the disparity between Silicon Valley executives and maybe more mainstream Chamber of Commerce executives, just in general, with Democrats versus Republicans? And, you know, I understand TDS and I understand Donald Trump has got some policies that don't fit into the normal business regimen that you would think of. But Silicon Valley, it doesn't matter who the Democrat is. I mean, they didn't back Romney, really. All along, they always are on the side of a party that some would view as less business friendly than Republican. Why is it like that? And that's why this is a sea change. And not only is it a Republican, but it's Trump.
You know, I think the politics, Joe, are complicated in the Valley if you go back. I mean, way back, there was actually very Republican support in the origin of Silicon Valley. But there's no doubt in what I think of as the Google, Obama, Eric Schmidt, Clinton era. Yep. There were Sheryl Sandberg and so forth. You know, you had a lot of strong Dem leaders around the Valley. And I think what's happening now is you see the folks like Andreessen, Thiel, Musk, you know, they're sort of libertarian in many ways, right, but they're ignoring social issues where they may not agree with President Trump, but, you know, they're deciding to really vote based on a targeted set of issues that they care a lot about. I mean, AI and crypto, if you're talking about Andreessen Horowitz, that's how they're going to make or lose their money, those two issues. So I think it's very complicated, and it's hard to say if we're swinging red or blue. I mean, the Valley and these leaders are kind of somewhere in the middle on many different issues. I also think, though, perhaps what we're seeing is the sense that Trump is going to be in the White House again. And if that's the case, it would, I suppose, make sense for some of these leaders to try and get behind him. And so it's
Jessica,
hard to decouple that.
I was going to point out, it was right after the shooting that you saw some business leaders come out and immediately throw their support behind him. Maybe they were counting on the idea that that would give him an even bigger bump, and thinking, okay, it's inevitable now. I want to make sure I get my chips on the table and get some credit for supporting him now.
Absolutely. I mean, Musk's endorsements was minutes, or, right in the thick of the assassination attempt.
He was close already, he's still right. He's still mad about the EV meeting where Mary Barra, she sold like 3 cars and Elon wasn't there.
I mean, that's a huge, it's fascinating to me. I mean, Elon's business, his fortunes rise and fall on the future of Tesla. Trump and Vance have been very clear that they, think that EV subsidies shouldn't be in the cards. So we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah. Do you think that his thought about needing or wanting subsidies at this point, given the success of that company relative to the others, it basically makes it almost impossible for everybody else if they don't have the subsidies? Is that how you see this? Do you think you think it's a broader philosophical view?
I think it's I think Musk is being practical in some ways, but the EV question is not resolved. I mean, competition. I mean, many people think it's a race to the bottom with commoditization for that business. So I don't think he can be feeling confident in that regard, but perhaps he's thinking he can change his mind. That might be why he put his cards on the table. And
then the other big one this morning, Elon Musk saying he's leaving California. I think we might have known that sort of a little bit in the back of our heads, but officially over this new law around gender identity in the state. Do you think this is going to lead to other companies moving officially to places like Texas?
We've seen a trickle, and I think that will continue. I've got to say, Elon has a knack for timing these moves that probably took 5 years to the 5 minutes when there's a headline in the news. You don't move a rocket factory's headquarters overnight. It's hard to say, Andrew. I think we're seeing some of that. There's movement outside of California for sure. But these days, there's actually a lot of activity, especially startup activity, back in the city. And I know many a venture capitalist who has decamped to Austin and come back. So I think we'll see in terms of the macro. But Elon's made it clear that he won't be in California. I think we were all expecting that.